Religion. Oh, Semitic magic, its origins and development, by R. Campbell Thompson. Whether there remains enough evidence to show that the Hebrews of the more historical period did eat human flesh is doubtful, but the traditions indicate that their Semitic forefathers did so. I think it's quite obvious. This is Bergman's view, that he says that it is clear from Numbers 23-24 that the blood of enemies slain in battle was drunk in the most ancient period. Further, Numbers 24:8 shows that their flesh was eaten. The only difficulty that would arise about the eating of the firstborn is the prejudice that some have against eating kindred flesh. For this reason, the wilder South American tribes, according to Cieza de Leon, bred children they might lawfully eat from wives of alien stock, the father being reckoned not akin to his children who follow the maternal line. On the other hand, Steinmetz, in his Endocannibalismus, has attempted to bring all cases of cannibalism under the term endocannibalism. Our custom of eating relations and kindred is quoted by Denecker, who says that the theory meets with the difficulty that certain Australian tribes avoid eating their relations except young children, and exchange between the various tribes. If, however, the kindred children be admitted as edible, there is no obstacle to our theory of the Semites eating their firstborn. There are metaphors about, there's the metaphor of eating children that refers to oral sex. You know, it's not killing and eating people, but there are other metaphors that refer to masturbation, and people just, for some reason that was a more taboo subject. It's like Aleister Crowley couldn't talk about non-coital sex. He couldn't talk about masturbation. No, that was too evil. But talking about eating, talking about excrement and urine and cannibalism and a bunch of stuff, that was just okay. No censorship with that stuff. The reason for the origin of cannibalism, if it existed among the Semites at an early period, as seems very probable, is not far to seek. In Arabia, the home of the Semites, at least before they split up into their various nationalities, is one of the most barren lands. Indeed, that the pressure of famine had far more to do with the origin of infanticide than family pride had, can be doubtful. To no one who realizes the fact, vividly brought out in Mr. Doty's travels, that the nomads of Arabia suffer constantly from hunger during a great part of the year. Necessity is one of the three reasons admitted for anthropophagy, the other two being gluttony and superstition, and therefore we shall probably not be wrong in thinking that the early Semites were driven by force of hunger to devour their children, and at the same time reduce their numbers. Doubtless the scarcity of food was one of the chief factors in driving them to look for better and more fertile lands. And as soon as he settled in the richer pastures of Mesopotamia, economic reasons would suggest the substitution of lambs and kids for the sacrifice of their own kin. Against this, it may be urged that up to the present no trace of this form of substitution has been found in cuneiform. Yet it must not be forgotten that much of the Babylonian religion as we know it, comes from the Sumerians, who inhabited these fertile valleys long before the Semites arrived. Now, the Sumerian culture is really sort of the one that came first. Well, there's the talk about the Yazidi 30,000-year-old culture, and the Göbekli Tepe in between, and which could be a form of Yazidi culture, but that's not really the scope of this here, is it? And hence we may assume that they have never been driven by famine to eat human flesh. Why the firstborn only should have been selected is not clear. There is nothing more appetizing about the first of a family than the second, and there is nothing peculiarly pure about them. For the pure beast in magic is the virgin. And let me remind you that chastity is more important than virginity. It is, however, a custom which compels every mother to take her turn, and at any rate secures a sure propitiation of the entity, if the entities are admitted to have regular dues paid by the tribe. This is the surest way of attaining such a result. To defer the gift until a second crop might, by failure or unexpected barrenness, bring down the divine wrath. But so many things have to be taken into account that it is difficult to evolve a satisfactory theory. Priestly or kingly influence doubtless had its effect on the tribute of rich tribesmen. We may reasonably consider, then, that the primitive Semite, long before historic times, was a cannibal and devoured the firstborn of the tribe at a sacrificial meal. And a lot of what we hear as Judaism is, well, it's not exactly prophetic, it's a compilation of both the prophetic traditions and whatever was going on among the northern Semitic tribes that would have been considered among the Israelites, or got grafted onto the Israelites. If you look into the history, a small tribe moves in, and eventually they form a kingdom and get well blended in. The priests don't like it. A lot of things. As time went on and the tribes grew richer in flocks, it became the custom to substitute a firstborn kid for the eldest child. Yet in times of great national stress, the Semitic mind would revert to primitive tradition. Perhaps instinctively, to the firstborn would be sacrificed to the entity. Now, if you look at modern claims of, there are people who are retarded, or whatever term you're going to put on that, I don't mean anything insulting, because usually it's not their fault. But when it comes to insanity, intelligence does make insanity more likely. Of course, I'm not trying to excuse everybody's behavior via a condition that we can diagnose and drug, like a certain organization that gained a lot of strength starting in, 1954? Well, there were others in other parts of the world, but I think you know what I'm talking about. The people of historical times had doubtless forgotten that human sacrifice represented a commensal cannibal meal, and regarded it either as a self-denying ordinance to offer their best, or else looked upon it as a surrogate for the whole people on the analogy of other substitutes. Yet the fact must never be lost sight of that the lamb brought as a sin offering took its origin in the carcass of the beast, which was intended as a bait to inveigle the evil spirit out of the sick man. On the other hand, the substitution of the lamb for the firstborn arises, as we have seen, out of a primitive cannibal sacrifice. The origins of the two rites are absolutely dissimilar, whatever may have been the ultimate phase to which a process of analogy brought them. Now, we see the actual evidence. I mean, okay, there's 3 million words in the Talmud? I don't know the exact number. But by the sheer numbers, in the thousands and the tens of thousands and the hundreds, example after example of just how many tablets we have, and so how overwhelmingly the evidence is outside of what we would call, there never was one Judaism, the Judaisms. So we see a certain prejudice here. We also see the prejudice in regards to the dispensationalist sort of thing. A lot of that's been disproved. It's like, oh, we're just average, and eventually we made our way to being Protestant Christians, and things don't quite pan out. And why couldn't you have stopped at monotheism? And then you have to go to tribal monotheism. Then you have to go to a monotheistic religion like Christianity. And then the Catholics the Catholics paved the way for the Protestants. And the more I read about it, the less it makes, the less it seems like it would have been the case. But of Robertson Smith, Religion of the Semites, page 464. In point of fact, even in olden times when exceptional circumstances called for a human victim, it was a child, and by preference a firstborn or only child, that was selected by peoples in and around Palestine. This is commonly explained as the most costly offering a man can make, but it is rather to be regarded as the choice for a special purpose of the most sacred kind of victim. Now, there are different, naturally it's going to be different rules and ways of treating the males and the females, people of different ages, but a stereotype that really doesn't have anything to do with Abrahamic religion if you look into it, but the Judeo-Christian priests have convinced us of otherwise. The preference of the males, they may have responsibility with finances, inherit more or something, but it's not that they're better. It's not that, you had a female child, woe is me. But that's sort of the impression you get, or, it's not good to be born a female or something. So all this about the firstborn male, the males did have their, stuff to do, but I don't think the base of things appears to be this when you look into it. And there are other things that go against this professional priesthood religions, these professional priesthood religions that we're going to see. But I'm going to